Could the offense have been better for the St. Louis Blues? And what was their biggest problems? I'll talk more about that coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I am your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode of Locked On Blues, I will be talking about the offense and the biggest problems that they have. I will be grading Mr. Colton Parayko, and we should be in the playoffs, and my frustration about the playoffs that we're not in. Also, an announcement of a special guest that I will be having on the show this week. A lot to dive into on today's episode. I do want to let you know, though, today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. I hope everybody is having a great Monday. I can't believe it's almost May. It's going to be May, but I feel like this month especially has gone by way too fast, but it's okay because that means that it is almost June, which I cannot wait for. I'm trying to see if I interviewed Parayko because I don't think he was one of the guys that was available for media, but huge episode today. So, offense and the biggest problems. So, what I did on my last episode, going through the defensive players, I kind of want to do that again for you now with the offensive players, just so you know what we were working with this season. Again, this was the active roster heading into the season. So, some of the players that got caught up won't be on here, but you can kind of get the point. So, Nikita Alexandrov. And when I go through this list, think of a player that was the weakest link. Sammy Blais. And when I said Sammy Blais after that, that didn't have anything to do with that. Pavel Buchnevich, Kevin Hayes, Kasperi Kapanen, Jordan Kyrou, Jake Neighbors, Brandon Saad, Braden Shen, Oscar Sundquist, Robert Thomas. If you say Robert Thomas, I'm sorry, but unsubscribe. Alexei Turchenko, and Nathan Walker. Obviously, some other guys got caught up. But from that list, I want you to think, is there a player on there that was one of the weakest links? And in yesterday's episode, I didn't even mention Matthew Kessel. He got caught up for defense. But again, I'm only saying the roster that we started with in the beginning of the season because there's a reason behind all this. Now, when I look at that list, and if you want my honest opinion, a player that I think is one of the weaker players, I would say Kevin Hayes is where I would first go. And I'm not coming at Kevin Hayes. I'm not doing this for any reasons other than I just don't think he had a great season. I don't think that he played the way that we expected him to play. Okay? When you look at the Blues' offense and you think about the biggest problems that they had this year, it was the lack of scoring in the second period. It was the lack of consistency. And you can make the argument, hey, that's every hockey team. Okay. But when the Blues needed to score, especially against the San Jose Sharks, for instance, they couldn't. And it's not like they're going against these goalies that have a huge reputation. You're going against rookie goalies. And it's nothing on the rookie goalies, by the way, because I love Joel Hofer and all. But it's the inconsistency that I saw from the offense. Too many turnovers. And I know what you're thinking, Jordan Kyrou with the turnovers. You could really look at every single player besides Robert Thomas and Jake Neighbors and find something that just was infuriating about how they played. Now, the reason why I read you that list of the roster heading into the season is because I want you to think of a question I'm about to ask. Was there anything that Doug Armstrong could have done in the offseason to make that roster sound a little bit better? And if you're not thinking yes, please just think yes, because there was a lot that could have been done. Do I think enough was done? No. And that's the thing with the Blues. And that's why I think last offseason was so frustrating. the only guy that they got was Kevin Hayes. And they re-signed Sundqvist, which was good. I again hope he's doing okay. There's no update on his injury, but I'm hoping that he's recovering so he can be back by next season. But when you hear that list, it does put it into perspective of okay, well, there's a reason why we're not in the playoffs. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the list we have bad players on the roster. It just meant that we don't have many superstars. And I think that, for me, I'm a huge Robert Thomas fan. We know that. I love Jake Neighbors, Pavel Buchnevich. When he's on, he's on. But we don't have enough players that have that oomph. I obviously watch the playoffs, and a lot of those teams have tons, and when I say tons, I mean like a couple at least, of players with big names. And I'm not saying that you need to have a big name in the league. I guess that kind of comes with it, right? With being really good. But you do need a couple of kind of all-star type of players to have better lines, because that was a big thing. I mean, God bless Jake Neighbors, but they were switching him like crazy, going from the fourth to the third to the second to the first line, back to the fourth line. It just was insane. And I blame a lot of it just on how weak some of the lines were. And I hate to think of the fourth line because I know Nathan Walker, and I love Nathan Walker, but our fourth line was better than our third line, Kevin Hayes's. It was a huge, huge problem, and that should never happen, first off. So there was a lot of problems in that aspect. But again, Kyrou, it's not that he had a bad season, but it was the turnovers that was a problem for me. Kapanen, inconsistency, Blay. What did he do sometimes? Alexandriov, again, where did he do anything? God got hot at the right moments. Appreciate that. Thank you. Jake Neighbors, like a good neighbor, Jake was always there. Shen started off the season really slow. Oh, and remember what's really funny? Okay, so remember we were talking a couple episodes ago about, the whole Blues relocation thing that almost happened? I always forget that Shenny is actually where that was from. The Saskatchewan in Canada, when they wanted the Blues to go there, and the NHL basically said, no way. That's where Shen's from. So that always kind of cracks me up. Anyways, Sundqvist, he played well. He got hurt. Unfortunate. Obviously, that sucks. Robert Thomas, you can't say anything bad about Robert Thomas. Alexei Torchenko, again, inconsistency, but again, I mean, he was doing fine on the fourth line, so it's fine. And then Nathan Walker, if you could tell me that Nathan Walker had the season that he had, I probably wouldn't believe you, because he played with so much effort. And that is one thing about Nathan Walker I will always commend, is his effort and his passion for the team. He's a great teammate, great guy in the locker room. And I can't think of one thing that's bad about Nathan Walker. So, but again, I can also see the whole, better puck control, because again, turnovers, but it's not fine, but not everyone's going to play perfect hockey. And I'm just looking at some of the negatives. And eventually I will look at the positives, but we need to digest the season as a whole, and that's what these episodes are. So, yeah. Do I feel like I'm being harsh on these guys? Yeah. Do I like it? Not at all. I hate it, actually. But I need to talk about it. So, you and I are talking about it. I'm also going to talk to you about FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing. Go Cards. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in the app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Boom. I'm going to be grading Colton Parayko. And before I begin grading Colton Parayko, I just want you to know that Colton Parayko is one of my favorite players on this team. And I personally just want to say this. I feel like sometimes Parayko gets a lot of hate, and it sucks. Like, think about it. Parayko's been in blue his whole life, right? He was drafted in 2012. He was the 86th overall pick. He's been here, and I don't know. I just feel like he's been here for so long. I mean, he's been literally playing games almost full seasons since 2015, 2016. So, yeah, he's a core part of this team. He has an A for a reason. And sometimes I feel like some of the hate that he gets, it just doesn't make sense in my head because he is such a valuable player to this organization, to the Blues. And I feel like he's not respected enough. And that just is my rant about Parayko. So, this season, he played all 82 games. So he's done that a couple other seasons. Actually, the only other season he played all 82 was 2017, 2018. So it was nice to have Parayko in all 82 games. He had 10 goals, 16 assists, 26 points, and he was +4, which is really, really good. So Mr. Parayko got more goals than I expected him to get this season. Last season, I told you he only had 4 goals. And my whole, when I did my preseason evaluation, I'm like, please get some more, please get some double digits. He got 10. And that's actually his career high. So the year we went to the Cup and won, he had 10 goals. And the following season, he had 10 goals as well. He's never exceeded more than 10. So maybe next season he'll get 11, which will be awesome for him. But the 16 assists, I mean, that was actually kind of low for Parayko. Last season, to put it in perspective, he had 4 goals and 23 assists. Season before, he had 6 goals, 29 assists. And then if we want to look back, yeah, the lowest amount of assists that he's ever had was 18 assists. Year we went to the Cup, and then year after. So that's crazy. I actually just realized that in the year we went to the Cup and the year after, he literally had 10 goals and 18 assists back-to-back seasons. That's crazy. But yeah, assist was low. And again, I'm not going to put that against him. Obviously, it'd be nice to have some more activity, but he is a defender, and I can't just look at that and say, oh, bad season, because I really wasn't. I mean, when you look at Colton Parayko as a whole, he is such a crucial part to the defense. And one thing I talked about before, I said that he, blocked shots, right? And he just is so good when it comes to blocking shots. So when it comes to Colton Parayko, just to put into perspective, and I don't want to bore you with it all, but in the past couple games, he had 3 block shots, 4, 5, 1, 4, 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 5, 3. What does that mean? What does that mean when you look at it? It means that Colton Parayko, honestly, was a clutch player that put his body on the line. Colton Parayko also led the NHL with 188 block shots, which breaks the Blues' franchise record of 186 block shots held by Jake McKee. So, if there's one thing about Colton Parayko, is he really is such a strong, dynamic player. And it's unbelievable to me that people can just look at him and think, oh, he's just okay. He's really good. He's a really good hockey player. So I'm sick of all the hate. I give Parayko, honestly. Oh, and this is where it gets tough because I want to give everybody high grades. But he deserves an A-. And I said what I said. To break a franchise record, to have 188 block shots, to be that strong and dynamic of a player, obviously you're doing something right. So Colton Parayko, good job for a good season. And if anybody disagrees, which you are totally allowed to have your own opinion, I just won't think that you're right. So, we all have opinions, but this is the right one. Oh no, Haley, you're being too competitive. What are you doing? All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers that you can trade with friends to compete, albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with consistently changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot um, machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multiplayer for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. I hate watching the playoffs because we should be in it. I was watching the Nashville and Canucks game last night. Okay. And this whole thing will tie back to the Blues. So I'm watching the game and I'm thinking to myself, oh, the Predators might actually win because there's a couple minutes left. They have a 2-goal lead. Like, obviously, like, you're like, okay, they're going to probably win. They miss an empty net. Then the Canucks are able to score 2 goals, and then the final goal to equalize the game was literally scored with 6 seconds left of regulation. And I'm like, okay. So then they go to overtime, and the Canucks win like a minute in. Now, why does this tie back to the Blues? Because we struggled against Nashville. We were down bad, okay? And they just looked awful against the Canucks. And I know that that's a good team, but it's like one of those things where I'm like, how did we make all the teams that we played look like they should be champions? And then I realized that we also played some really good teams like the Avalanche, who we looked like champions against. It's like this team didn't make sense. But I also was more infuriated because I'm watching the East, right? And the Rangers swept the Capitals. And, naturally, what do you think when that happens? Oh, the Rangers are really good. I mean, they are a President's Trophy. I hope that curse gets them, but they're a good team. We had more points than the Capitals by a good amount. And we were not in the playoffs because we're in the West. Oh my goodness. Watching the playoffs, like, I know that I shouldn't be complaining because it's the Blues' own fault. And I get that. And I know that. I really do know that. But it doesn't make it any less infuriating. Watching the playoffs this year, I mean, watching Tampa Bay, like, what is with everything? And I think it's just more frustrating because we, as a team, would have been in the playoffs if we were in the East. And, well, that didn't happen. I mean, for instance, this season, in November, we beat the Lightning 5-0, and then the Lightning beat us 6-1. So it's like, okay. So that wasn't I don't understand it. I really don't. And it just will infuriate me. But with the Predators this season, they beat us in all 3 games. It was 6-3. It was 8-3. It was 5-2. Like, but yet they miss their own empty net. Like, and you wonder why I'm frustrated. It's one of those things that is so infuriating. I mean, luckily with the Capitals, I will say that TJ is on their team, so I'm like, oh yeah, go TJ. But we beat the Caps 3-0, and then the Capitals beat us 5-2. And you might be like, Haley, you're literally stirring yourself crazy right now with all this, but it's the reality. I mean, the Panthers beat us 5-1. We beat them 4-1. Like, we could compete, right? But then you have teams like in our Central Division, like the Winnipeg Jets, who beat us 4-2, beat us 4-2 again, and then beat us 5-2. And then that makes me feel a little bit better because I'm like, okay, like, at least, like, that wasn't, like they beat us, like they deserve it. But then you look at the Avalanche, they beat us 4-3. We beat them 8-2. Remember when Shenny and Booch got a hat trick? And then they beat us 2-1, and then they beat us 4-1. So that makes me feel better, but sometimes I'm just like watching these teams play and I'm like, we were kind of better, but that's my regret. So, should we be in the playoffs? I think so. Hopefully next season. I miss being in the playoffs. I miss watching hockey late in April and May for the Blues. It sucks. So, hopefully next season. All right. Well, I'm going to try to calm down, but I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.